I didn't see Sidney, but I know you did. The
Hmm.
documentary looking at the life and career of the iconic actor Sidney Poitier, including interviews from all the famous black stars and directors in Hollywood that you can think of. Art, what did you think about Sidney?
Uh, as a basic entry level, looking at what Sidney did throughout his career, I think it's pretty decent. I can't say that it gets too personal or does something in the sense of them being able to flip it into something where you're able to have his artistic voice put on it. He is a talking head in there, and you have several other different people. Um, but there's another one that you have where I think it's able to take a director who knows how to make a documentary and make it feel more lived in. Sydney, I think, has Oprah as like a really big producer, and
Yeah,
that's no push to Oprah, but I think you know the glossy style of an Oprah documentary. When they
yeah.
get to a part of like Sydney went out and he didn't come home because he was, well, doing something else. And then the next scene is cutting to him like winning an Academy Award because you can't have people ponder on Sydney that bad for why he didn't come home. And I'm like, nah, dive deep into it. That's what I mean by
Right.
glossy. You know, it's still 2 hours. So that's why I think that it's able to cover a wide spread of things. But I mean, Sydney's too big to be able to just have him in one feature film. This is a man who needs a docuseries. This is like,
Yes.
you have Denzel sitting there pretty much saying, without Sydney, there is no me. You know, I am the person who he passed it on to carry on. You have everybody there who he's affected in various degrees, being able to give some input. But still, I think it's not going to be the definitive thing for Sydney. But it's still very much probably one of the biggest ones that people are going to gravitate towards because of the amount of people and insights they were able to bring in.
Yeah, I was talking to Shane Intercutie that we've met in Toronto before, and he caught Sydney, and he was saying that it's like a decent documentary for somebody who doesn't really know anything about Sidney
Yeah.
Poitier. But people, I think if you are interested in movies and movie history, you do know a lot of those things about Sidney Poitier. So maybe this isn't the documentary that is going to give you that deep dive that we're always asking for from these
But it's
profile
good. But it's
documentaries.
good. You know, there's a moment where he talks about him and Harry Belafonte and their on and offs and how they had to come back together because they needed to. And I'm like, but what happened there? I want a whole talk just on that, just on like on their friendship, and that ends up just being in the fringes of this. So yeah, it makes you want more. So that's how you know it's incomplete, but nonetheless gives you a good overview of what the man's life was. This next one, though, I thought was
Yeah,
a lot better. I think
I
it's able
think
to get into the thought process of a man, and to me,
absolutely.
that's where you really get into the creativity, and that's because of this director, Sasha Jenkins.
I think we both responded a lot to Louis Armstrong's Black and Blues, which takes a look at his life and does it in a style that I thought was really interesting. I had commented to you after Toronto that I always love when a documentary tries to really evoke the person that it's about. So Louis Armstrong apparently kept a scrapbook where he kept many of his newspaper write-ups and photos and stuff like that. So the documentary here takes on the look of a scrapbook in retelling parts of the story. It's that kind of like care for the presentation that I think takes something like this and brings it beyond what we normally get in like a typical profile documentary.
I also really like the idea of him having kept a record of like everything that he did, so you
Mm-hmm.
actually do have a lot to show. And I love how he's like, you're gonna show everything, the good, the bad, but I'm gonna make sure that I have all of it recorded to
Mm-hmm.
some degree. And just seeing the turmoils of like not just him as an artist, which I think is a really good balance that the movie has. It's not just like here's the racial divides that he had to face. Here's him as a musician and also what he had to face, and how both of them blend in depending on where he is, but not subtracting one for the other, and being able to see like not justify or what's the word I'm looking for? I guess it is justify some of the actions or things that he had to do, but looking at it from the context of said times. There was one specific talking head that looks back on how a lot of other of his contemporaries looked at him and thought he was kind of like a sellout, and then spending time with him and realizing like, oh no, he's doing like what he's going through is something that once you recognize it and you apply it to your own journey, you realize like, no, that's not a person that I would make fun of ever again. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it really puts you into his state of mind during that period of time, which is insane. Uh, but what he meant artistically and what he was able to do with his voice. And I mean, if you don't know Louis Armstrong, just like Google, YouTube, whatever, you'll listen to a couple. I don't expect everyone to know like every trumpet solo that he did, but like you listen to the what's it called? His most famous song. I
I mean,
played it
what
for
if
Lena.
does
Yeah,
anybody not know What a Wonderful
that's what
World?
I'm
Like maybe
saying.
you
I
don't
play that,
know, maybe you don't know his name or can his
but like
other
you
songs.
know that,
Yeah,
and it
that's
speaks
just
to you. Yeah, his
mhm,
voice to go from blowing on an instrument to then singing like that. It's
yeah.
otherworldly. So yeah, I think Louis Armstrong's someone who deserves like biopics, miniseries, all that.
Hmm.
And I'm just glad he got a really good doc because Sasha Jenkins also did Bitchin' earlier this year,
Yeah.
the Rick James doc, and hey, he continues it here.
Absolutely. And, luckily with Louis Armstrong, Black and Blue, there are, you mentioned all those records that he gets to pull from and pull actual quotes from, plus all the radio interviews. And
It was
Louis
clean,
Armstrong
dude.
would also record himself. It's such a gift to be able to have
Visuals.
the person being profiled, not just the visuals, but the person being profiled actually speaking about themselves and their career, despite the fact that Louis died almost 50, maybe 50 years ago now, 51 years ago now, which is crazy to think about considering how present a lot of his legacy and culture or music remains. You mentioned the biopic treatment that he hasn't really gotten yet. Forrest Whitaker, for many, many years, was trying to get a movie made called Satchmo that would star him as the iconic trumpeter. And I was
Interesting.
always kind of hoping that would happen, although I feel like Forrest is now getting towards the territory where he might be a bit too old to do
Kinda,
most
yeah.
of the story. I don't know if this is like the craziest idea in the world. Maybe I'm just saying this because I really like him as a actor, but I almost feel like Sam Richardson might make a decent Louis Armstrong.
Sam Richardson could make a really great Louis Armstrong.
Right?
He
Should
just
we
got
get
to
on
work on
it?
that. He works on that smile. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
we're talking Oscars for sure. It was interesting that you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned Forrest Whitaker because he played Charlie Bird Parker in the Clint Eastwood movie a couple years
Right.
back. I don't know if you ever saw Bird, but I can see him definitely having that like drive to want to make something like this because I thought he was pretty good. I own this movie. I own Bird, so I could definitely see him being in this role. He is older now, so I like your Sam Richardson thing. My money's in.
Yeah. Let me pull
We'll
up
call
Bird
we'll call
here.
their
Just
people.
yeah, exactly. Right. Make sure we get a producer credit at the very least.
Yeah, but no, Bird's
Uh,
a good one to mention, especially with the Forrest Whitaker connection. I feel a lot of people like him saying that. Does he have the lungs to still do it?
right.
There was also I did not know this. He wants to play Michael Jordan. Idris Elba's dream role is
Wants to
to
play
play
Michael
Michael Jordan.
Jordan.
You did not know
Is he
about
gonna
this. This is
Irishman it
fresh.
or what is?
My dude,
What is he doing?
this is like Beast press run talking about this. And his wife's like, "Oh yeah, that used to be your dream." And he goes, "Used to?" He like adamantly still wants to play Michael Jordan. He got laughed at, I think, in a sports podcast, and he goes, "No, no,
Right.
I meant like the businessman, Michael Jordan." I don't know, but clearly he really wants to play Michael Jordan. So if Forrest Whitaker still has lung capacity to do Louis, then maybe maybe you can see Idris from the free throw.
I do now need to see that movie. I'm very
You kind of
curious.
want to, right?
Yeah. Yeah.